I'd like to say that I'm on the side of a decent, respectful, orderly civilization. And that I'm really on the side of biblical love and kindness and respect and truth, treating others the way you would want to be treated. And so as things are counted in this world, I'd like to be counted on the side of good and not evil. I know I'm bringing it a little bit heavy here, but I'd really like to say I've got an economic message, an economic freedom message, but it's really about our society and it's about our civilization. So this is my attempt at putting some of those principles into practice. Thank you.
We're going to go out and split the middle, so there's the ninth Delegate District, and we'll start off with that. That sounds right?
Yep, sure. Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Nhan. I'm the Republican nominee for the 9th District. This is actually my second run here. Karrie knows, and we have more of a crowd 2 years ago, and but 2 years, lots of changes, but many things stay the same, right? We still have one-party rule in Fairfax County. We still have terrible rising cost of living. We still have the education, the schools' performances have gone down. We have issues with the schools, we have, and now we have many federal employees out of work, and a lot of economic turmoil. So I'm running again because Sully is important to me. I grew up around here. I am a first-generation immigrant. I was not born in the U.S. I was born in Vietnam, but I grew up here, and I've been here for 30+ years. And I care deeply about the area, and I wanted to do well. When I grew up, it was a great place to live and work, and I can ride my bike everywhere, and so many things. I grew up in affordable housing. There were many government services that I utilized, but at the same time, we also use that as a hand up and help our lives better. And I want to see that to continue and have it better for the next generation. And right now, I don't see that. I'm seeing that we are doing a disservice to our younger generations. And so I'm stepping up here to run just so we can have a change. I want to thank Karrie for her service for years, and David is also a long time here in Fairfax, and they've contributed to making Fairfax the way it is now, for better or for worse. But it's been one of the richest county in the country. But right now, I don't think the taxpayers of Fairfax County is getting the value that we put. It's it's not so much that we don't believe in paying tax or doing having the government provide some services. It's also that whether those services provide us the value and the benefits that we deserve. And I believe Fairfax County deserves a lot more. It's the second or third richest county in the nation, and we should have the best school systems. We should have a lot of housing for our young generation to Gen Z to be able to afford. And we should have a great place, clean environment, clean infrastructure, and what have you. And it's been going downhill. Right? We have crimes, we have police staff that we cannot fill. Recently at Fairfax Mall, we have an illegal immigrant trying to kidnap a 3-year-old. At Centerville High School, we have lots of controversies. Those are controversies, but we also need to focus on, I know many of the older generations have to move out of Fairfax County because they can't afford it. And Sully is one of the better exceptions in Fairfax County, where the population stays relatively the same, yeah, or slightly increase, as people can't afford the eastern Fairfax County and move further west. But again, the housing here is unaffordable. I grew up in affordable housing, and, I would like to see better housing so the younger generations can also come in. And also, for federal workers who are struggling right now, that they have places and help that they can afford. And yeah, and of course, one of the things, right, we gotta axe the car tax, right? I mean, car tax is a big thing. It was there a few years ago, it went away, but then we brought it back unnecessarily. That's gotta go so we can help the affordability of living here. We also need school choice, so our children can have better education. And again, I already mentioned affordable housing. Anyway, I'm that I think we need in Fairfax County. One party rule doesn't really suit the taxpayers in the long run. And I think it's good for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe it's your turn now.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Karrie Delaney. As mentioned, I ran for this seat in 2017 and have been delegate for the 9th District since. I serve on B Courts Committee. I am one of the sub-chairs on Delegate Bulova's General Laws Committee, which was a newer committee to me after the last election cycle. I was moved from the Health Committee to Gen Laws. So as he mentioned, it would take 5 minutes to explain what it does. And I had to take a crash course in what that committee does as a new member and then a subcommittee chair, but it has been really fascinating. It's one of the greatest things about being in the General Assembly is hearing about issues that you may have not really known a whole lot about until someone brings it to you and you realize it's a problem, and then you have to very quickly become an expert on it. And so you do get to learn a lot very quickly. And then I also chair the Transportation Committee, which is incredibly relevant for this area. That is one of the, I think, issues that we all can kind of come together on more than anything else is our agreement that transportation and congestion is a big problem for Northern Virginia, and that we need to continue to fight to figure out those solutions. One of the things I like most about that committee is the fact that it is, it's political, but it's not partisan, is kind of how I frame it. It's much more regional politics than it is about partisan politics. So it really is one of the places where when you come and watch the committees at work, you can kind of see people coming together from different parts of Virginia, different political parties, to kind of sort out like how we want to address certain issues that may have much less to do with partisan politics and much more to do with sort of the regional needs of the Commonwealth. So I love the opportunity to chair that committee. So the reason that I ran for office and kind of what keeps me really most inspired in this role, though I've had an opportunity to work on a lot of different pieces of legislation, but what kind of inspired me originally, my career started in human service. I used to work with kids in foster care. I was a sexual assault crisis counselor. I've gone on to do policy work for a nonprofit organization that fights sexual violence. And through my direct service work in my very early career, I learned how important policy was. Helping one person overcome the same hurdle time and time again was an important job. It was an honor to get to do it, but it really inspired me to recognize that the role of policymakers is so significant, because why help one person over the same barricade when you could find yourself in a position to tear that barricade down? So a lot of my career, I have focused on issues that relate to those types of vulnerable populations. I think I'm most well known in Richmond for my work on issues relating to human trafficking, sexual and domestic violence, and child welfare. So those are kind of the hard issues that bring me to Richmond. But while I'm there, serving on committees like transportation has certainly kind of opened up my portfolio of legislation to deal with a lot of other issues, ranging this past session from issues that affect our aviation industry to prescription drug affordability and the cost of healthcare, especially how medical debt affects the bottom line for a lot of Virginians. I've passed a couple of bills over this last 2 sessions that deal with addressing medical debt. And, I think that some of the most important pieces of legislation come from the community. Kind of going back to what I said before, sometimes there's an issue that you don't know anything about until someone brings it to you. You might not even know it's a problem until someone reaches out and says, okay, I need to meet with you about something my family's gone through. And then you hear that story, you kind of understand, yeah, that shouldn't be that way. Let's try to fix it. Let's put in a bill. Let's address this, kind of become a quick expert on whatever that issue might be. And then you're able to hopefully pass a law that can help that business, that person, that community in sort of a unique way. And I think that that's what's so important. And I really just want to recognize how important what's happening right here is. Because, we are in a particular political time where I think we need more of this. We need more people who disagree on probably some of the hot button issues we probably all kind of know across the aisle what we disagree on. But there's probably a lot of stuff you're going to hear tonight that we do agree on. Now, we might not agree exactly how to get there, but that's where the conversation comes in. Because when you go to Richmond, you're going to see that a vast majority of the bills are passed with bipartisan support. I had Governor Youngkin sign 11 of my bills this session. And I can come up and talk about the one that he vetoed or, the things that didn't happen. And sometimes that's important to have those conversations. But I think we're at a time right now in this country where we also need to hear about the Republican governor who signed 11 bills that a Democrat put forward because we agreed on 11 things. And those were 11 things that I hope are going to make our community stronger. And I think we really need to focus on that and having this kind of dialogue where we can all come together and sort of sort out what we agree and what we disagree on. But I hope at the end of the day, see, okay, I think we kind of want a lot of the same things. How do we get there? How do we move the needle and really work on those solutions? I think that's what this whole community really needs to feel heard, even when we might not agree. I know some of you in this room are not going to agree on some of the ways I vote, and that's okay. But I do want to still talk to you about things we can work on together. So it's an honor to get to be here with you tonight, and thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you much. Person, you have to speak, then we'll go to the videos, then we're going to open up the questions from the floor. But as many of you have ever wanted to pull layers over time, we have pieces of paper here. You'll take the pieces of paper, you write your question here, and they're small to ensure that there are no statements, there are questions. Okay? So you'll fill these in, and then I'll ask the questions. And if we run out of these pieces of paper, there are more. Generate more. Okay? So the next one, David. I should say David G. because-
David Guil, yeah, you spelled my name. That's Guil. That's all right, I take no offense. Yes. No, that's perfectly fine. All right, a little bit about myself. I came to Fairfax County back in about 1990. I'm originally from New York, as you can tell from my accent. I have been married now to the same woman for 42 years now. I've met her at the U.S. Naval Academy. And she, for whatever reason, stuck with me since. So I'm pleased with that. We've had 3 children together. And one of them actually my oldest turns 40 tomorrow. So that's a big day for us and for him also. I also have 5 grandchildren, which I love dearly. They range in age from 15 to 3. And I get to spend a lot of time with them since I have retired last year. I turned 66 next month. Next month. And I got into running here for the 10th district simply from an email requesting, hey, is there anybody in here that would like to run? I answered up and I said I might. So I might means that I will. So obviously I am in here, and I'm here for specific reasons. And kind of the theme of what I'm looking at and what I see in here, because I've been here now since 1990. So that's, what is that? That's about 30 some odd years. And returning to normal, common sense local politics. We don't have to solve, the problems of this country. We just need to solve the problems here. Now, uniquely, I think I am qualified for that. And the reason is because that's what I've spent my career doing. I am an engineer. Like I said, I spent 3 years at the Naval Academy, got my degree from New York Institute of Technology. I have a master's from Johns Hopkins University. I have a master's in computer science and a minor in mechanical engineering. So basically what you learn from engineering is how to solve problems. And problem solutions that's what we do. That is, no matter what the problem is, how to break it down, how to solve it.
Freedoms all by the Trump administration.
I appreciate that. So again, you know, as an engineer, I've learned that I've worked on many projects, private and also for the government. One of the first projects I worked on was the Patriot missile system up in Massachusetts. A lot of people don't realize the Patriot missile system was first conceived in the 1960s. We didn't really have the technology or the wherewithal to actually build it. We could build certain sections of it, but we actually got it working for the first time during the engineering watch when I was involved with that. I've also worked for TDRS, which allowed communication satellite to satellite using beam steering. I've also helped to alleviate wind shear in air traffic, which was a problem from the 80s. Worked on health problems in theater and documenting and actually treating our special forces as well as our regular troops in theater, which is a unique place for that because there's a lot of trauma that goes on. So I've done a lot of that and unique situations, each one. So actually you got to learn the environment and learn what's going on, and then you move on to that. So the issues that I see with that are, or with running as a delegate for the 10th district, four real main issues: crime, taxes, education, and males and girls spaces. I'm calling it that. In crime, I think we're fully aware of what occurred in Fairfax County, and we're in Fair Oaks Mall, what occurred there. And the fact that it was actually done by an individual that was released early. So prosecuting and holding the prosecutions for all criminals, I think is important, and returning to some common sense for that. Taxes, I think we talked about. I think that's a common theme with us is car tax, and you know, in getting rid of that. We do have a tax surplus, from what I understand, and we should really look to turn that back to the people. But also tax relief for our senior citizens. Because right there is a brain trust. You know, it's a huge brain trust which we need to keep and utilize. Education, transparency is important. We understand what occurred at Central High School. Why did that occur? That's just not good. So we need to actually have transparent, get our parents involved. I think we all agree on that. You know, and again, that's return to normalcy. Men or boys and girls spaces. That too, I think common sense is important there. There's no reason for Virginia, and not specifically our area, but next to us, for us to be headline news in this stuff. I mean, when I went to school, when you all probably went to school, we knew girls, boys, locker rooms, bathrooms, common sense. Now, I understand that there is an issue with trans. I've worked with several trans people. I don't want to get into that now. You'll see things with that, but there needs to be some empathy with that. I understand that, but there's common sense, because again, we don't want the tail wagging the dog. That's the key thing. That's what common sense is all about. So that's what my focus is going to be, should you elect me. Simply common sense. Let's negotiate things. Let's talk about it. Let's come to solutions that are meaningful for the community. We don't care what really goes on outside our area. Time to finish?
Time to finish.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Let me first, I'm going to spend time. Delegate candidates who could not be here tonight, then we'll go to the questions from the floor. Let me first remind all the people who are here tonight that the Sully District Council Citizens Association sponsors its report from Richmond on the 4th Wednesday of May. Many of the delegates who are here tonight have reported in the past. But if you do get elected, put that on your calendar. We hope that you'll be able to return on the 4th and tell us how the 2026 session went. We always want to know, when we send you, what do we get back? What did we lose? Or as Thomas Jefferson said, right? You know, that's, in any case, now I hope that this will work. If it won't work on the video, we may just hear their sound, okay? So I'm gonna try this now. I'm gonna first go with Delegate Helmer, because we just heard from somebody else in this district. So let's see that. I'm gonna share this screen. So,
I am Nhan Helmer. I'm your delegate. It's been such an honor to represent Centerville and Sully District for the last 6 years. I really hope to have your support in the upcoming election. The challenges we face right now as a community with the high cost of living, the attacks on our freedoms by the Trump administration. I'm really appreciative of all the support over the years. I love being from the area. I love fighting for our community. And if you ever need anything from me, please reach out at any time. Dan@danhelmer.com. I hope to have your support this event.
okay, you just heard that one, and I don't, it's funny because if you look at what I get on the screen, all I get is, what's right here? And we moved over to the screen. I get a blank screen from the media player, and all it does is it gives me the voice. There's a technical issue that I have not yet been paid to figure out. Okay, so we're going to go to the next one. This is from Delegate Irene Shin. Let's hope that this works. Share the media player.
Hi everyone, and good evening. Thank you so much to the Sully District Council of Citizens Associations for putting together tonight's forum and for being a part of this. I'm really sorry that I couldn't be there in person with you, but I wanted to send along this video to have a chance to reintroduce myself to you all and to talk a little bit about my upcoming elections this November. For folks I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Irene Shin, and I represent the current 86th District in the Virginia House of Delegates, and I'm running for re-election in the 8th District. The redistricting process has changed everyone's maps just a little bit, in some places a lot, and our district is about 40% new, and it includes a couple more precincts in the Sully district, so I'm really excited to get to work more closely with the community in Sully, and I'm excited to continue our partnership with you all. In the past couple of years, I've been really proud of the track record I've been able to build in bringing effective and progressive representation to our community. As many of you know, when I first ran in 2021, we talked a lot about what it looked like to build representation that was actually reflective of our priorities and our values here in this district. One of the bills that I'm most proud of having passed in the last 2 years is HB 2038. It's a bill that I introduced in 2023 this past session and was actually passed unanimously through both chambers, which is something that I'm really proud of. Every single one of my bills that I've passed since coming into office has been on a bipartisan basis because I think the kind of issues that require our utmost attention and urgent attention is the ones that everyone can agree on. And so HB 2038, I'd like to talk a little bit about it because I think it's a story that might resonate with many of you and your families, because it was actually a bill that came from my constituent, as the best bills often do. They come from our community. My constituent, Nhan, had just started her job as a state employee, and her daughter, who is an adult child with a developmental disability and living in a group home, but is financially dependent on her parents still. Nhan was really disappointed to find that her daughter was not eligible for health insurance under her state employee plan. And so her daughter was enrolled in her father's health insurance plan through his employer, and they thought they had worked it out. I had worked with them to go through an appeals process with the state board to see if we could say, hey, I understand that the daughter doesn't live at home, but she lives in a group home, is still financially dependent on her parents, and for private employers who provide healthcare for their employees, this kind of coverage is extended and is given to their dependents. The state denied the claims and the appeals, and so we decided, well, we would just go and try and figure out a different way to get her coverage. Things ultimately took a turn for the worse before they got better, because late last year, Nhan lost her husband, and so her daughter was no longer going to be eligible for insurance through her father's healthcare insurance, and they were going to put her on Cobra. The Cobra plan was going to cost almost $1,200 monthly, and she would only be eligible for it for the next 6 months. Obviously, this is a huge bind. And so the bill that we carried, HB 2038, basically said, if you are a state employee and you have an adult child who is living with developmental or intellectual disabilities, they would also be eligible for coverage through the parents' plan. And that was a big win for us in terms of expanding healthcare to some of the most vulnerable Virginians and those who live in our community. I'm proud of that bill. I'm proud of the bipartisan support that I was able to garner for it, and I look forward to doing more as the delegate from this district in expanding affordable and accessible healthcare access. A couple of other things that I've worked on with my colleagues that I'm really proud of include things like establishing the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. It was unfortunately a measure that did not pass this session, but I look forward to working on it in the future because it is something that I think can be really helpful in providing oversight and regulation of the pharmaceutical industry and the astronomical prices that they are charging for prescription drugs, and especially for our seniors and folks who are living on, restricted incomes. That can be something that is a hugely beneficial cost savings measure for folks in our community. In my last meeting that I was able to attend with you all in person, one thing I heard was the concern around gun violence. I think that we know all too well right now, gun violence is an epidemic that is not only uniquely American, but causing so much terror in our kids' lives and in classrooms and in schools, in houses of worship. And one thing that I'm really proud to have also fought for, along with the Democratic colleagues that I represent this community with, is making sure that we're preserving the gun safety measures that have been implemented over the past few years. That includes things like the red flag laws that'll make sure that people who are posing a direct risk to themselves or to others, that a magistrate or a judge is able to temporarily take their firearm away from their possession so that they can be safe, at least for the time being, and keep others safe too. We'll look to continue to work on banning assault rifles. I've heard the concern of gun safety and gun violence prevention from this community, and I wanted to assure you that that is something that I take very seriously and care deeply about and will continue to work on. And finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about democracy and the state of our voting rights in Virginia. In just the last couple of years, Virginia has gone from being the 49th worst state in the country to vote in to becoming the 9th best state to vote in. We've seen record turnout numbers because it turns out that when people have the opportunity to participate in their democracy, they do and they want to. And I think it's so important that we continue to restore faith in public institutions like our voting and election systems, in our elected officials, and in those who are elected to represent us in our communities. Virginia is unique in that we have elections every single year. I don't think it's by design that voter fatigue is part of the calculation, and when we decide who does and doesn't come out and make their voices heard at the ballot box. I hope that all of you will show up, whether it's between now or November 7th, because early voting is underway, and we are in election season now, to make sure that your voices are heard. I think that we can build a stronger, more representative and reflective government that is responsive to our needs and our priorities when everyone makes sure that their voices are heard at the ballot box. So I hope that you also will go out and cast your ballot, and I hope that I can count on your support. Again, I'm really sorry I wasn't able to be with you all in person tonight, but I look forward to seeing you all very soon and continuing to work in partnership in service of our community. Thanks so much.
If I can figure out how to pull this off, and get this back on the picture. Okay, so, all right, so I'll stop sharing. Okay, stop sharing. And all right, so the next thing we have now is question time. And so, I've circulated some papers. Does anybody need more paper? All right. If you have paper, you're not using it, please pass it on. We're gonna do it, and I can hand it. Hold on. So I have the first question. What was that from Johnny Dawson? Great so-and-so. Many of you may remember that. In any case, the General Assembly continue to address the JLARC education study shortly. Now, I'm going to put an X on this side and submit the paper because there's two sides to every piece of paper. Okay? So there's another paper that you can use on the back side. All right, so who would like to ask how we can handle the JLARC situation? And first, can one of our people here who know what the J-Lock study is, explain it? For the others who don't, okay? I'm gonna start on this side.
I'm happy to provide some background on the JLARC study, and this actually relates a little bit to what I had mentioned in terms of raising the support staff cap for public education. And so I think one of the things that we've all kind of inherently known as Virginians, and particularly Fairfax County residents, is that Virginia has long underfunded its share of the cost of public education. The reason why that is so important to us is because our school board, our Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, aren't going to let our public education fail. They want to make sure that we're continuing to provide quality education. But that also means that impacts our real property taxes. And so we all feel that in terms of our increased real property taxes because the Commonwealth hasn't done its fair share. The JLARC report kind of put that into starker terms, right? And so they spent a year studying exactly what was going on. It was no surprise that they said, you're right, we are underfunding our part. And so the next question is, what do we do about it? And so actually, I was appointed to a special joint subcommittee with our Senate colleagues to start to unravel, how do we ensure that we're paying our fair share? I'll tell you that we have already started making a lot of progress in that regard, particularly with English language learners and special needs services. And so we're slowly starting to fix this, but this is like $1 billion problem. And so we're biting it off in small bits. The thing that I did last year with that support cap, so since 2008, there had been a cap on reimbursements for support staff, which particularly affected Fairfax County. It was put in place during the Great Recession as a way for the state to save money and balance our budget at the expense of our counties. And so after almost 20 years, we finally got that across the finish line. So I mentioned $20 million for Fairfax County. Statewide, it was about $233 million that we really owed our school districts as a down payment towards doing that. We are continuing to work on what the next steps are, and these are the more difficult ones. So those were low-hanging fruit because everybody kind of wins when you do these things. Other things that we're doing are going to affect funding formulas and things like that. And that's where the regional politics that was talked about by Karrie Delaney in terms of making sure that we're all winners and we're not pitting different areas of the state with respect to that funding. One of the things that I want to highlight that will probably be the most meaningful recommendation from JLARC is to make sure that the money that comes from Richmond is adjusted to reflect the additional cost that it takes to live and learn in places like Northern Virginia. It is about 33 to 66% more expensive to live in our region, and yet we only get a pittance additional money for that cost to compete. And so that's kind of my mission down in Richmond, is ensuring that all the dollars are benchmarked and adjusted so that we are getting as not much back to adjust for the cost of living up here. So that's tough because we wind up being winners. We get more money and other areas aren't going to get as much money, but it's only fair, but it's essential in order to being able to right size the Commonwealth's investment.
Would anybody like to speak to that?
I'd like to ask him a question, and then I'll speak, if you don't mind. So I know the JLARC studies. I was just the school board came in 2023, so and I'm all on board and making sure that we have the formulas right. I think my question though is, you know the amount of money that's short. Why didn't we get the money from Richmond? Why didn't we get the money from Richmond? I mean, it's a study, it recommends something, but the money has not come. So what's happened is the Fairfax Board of Supervisors has, as you know, and you said it, is that every year they've had to compensate for that. So I'm just wondering the procedure on what happened.
Yeah, so in Virginia, our Constitution requires us to balance our budget every year. And so when you're talking about $1 billion problem, it's not that we have $1 billion capacity with respect to all the other things that we're trying to deal with that we can go ahead and write out a check to mitigate the situation. And so the prudent way of doing this is to make sure that we are taking the chunks of money and doing this over time. It's not that we don't want to do it, but again, we've got regular K through 12 benchmarking. We've got Medicaid adjustments just this upcoming year to make sure that we're keeping the pace with inflation on those. That's probably going to be another $1.7 billion. And so you got to put into context that we, unlike the federal government, have to balance our budget every year. And so we have to be able to roll that out responsibly. And that's what we're trying to do.
And so, follow up, did we roll anything out?
So yes, we have. And so I can't quote the exact amount that we have, but it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars range, with a focus on special needs, English language learners, and those who are economically disadvantaged. So again, working towards that, I think we're doing it in a very serious-minded way and a prudent way. But at the same time, we realize at the end of the day, we got to balance our budget.
So I just follow up because I did say that education was one of my priorities, and I am on board with public schools. My children and I went to public schools. We just need to make them stronger. And I don't think that just putting money into something that's not doing well will necessarily make it do better. And so this is where I think we have to think seriously about how do we educate our children, and what could be the 4 or 5 things that can go into our education system, and get serious, because our kids are really losing and our society is losing. So that's why I propose, I would propose, if I was able to, an act that called School Accountability Act. And basically what that is we have our school systems, public school systems, and we would have an independent program audit. We have financial audits, we have that, but you need program audits to understand why goals are not being met or what are being met. And so I would propose that would be something that we would have our public school systems do. And then taxpayers can feel more comfortable about the money that goes into the school once they start figuring out and come up with some solutions to use it. And then I'd also carve out some money to go towards scholarships for the children who are in low economic, their parents in low economic situations. And we would, the charter school may work for them, a private school may work for them, a parochial school. My kids went to a parochial school one time when we went to Washington State because the public school system was pretty abysmal there. And so we went to parochial school, it was great. I'm a judge for homeschoolers and a cherry blossom competition every year where they do oratory speaking, and it's fun. So I think there's room here to find some of the money. Now, there are other programs in Virginia that we should be looking at, maybe revamping and finding some money to go to this area, and then you can balance your budget. One of them would be I would say the Virginia Clean Energy Act, and putting that. So it's not working very well. So I think those are the kind of trade-offs you have to make. So that's my.
Thank you. Any other comments?
If I may.
Ready to go?
May I?
You, then over here. Okay.
So I would first want to challenge the premise. So the premise seems to be that we don't have enough money and that we're not spending enough money. And I haven't looked specifically at the budget. Maybe David could tell me how much we spend. But I got a free book last night. I opened it and I've been learning. It cost me nothing. So why does it cost millions, if not billions of dollars to teach people what I understand is nothing? My understanding is that we have very poor ratings. So as a person who lives on a budget, a very tight budget, I would say, how are we spending our money first before we need more or ask for more, etc.? I understand we have an administrator problem. So anyone who's listening who is an administrator, I'm sorry. But it seems like we have a whole lot of administrators and maybe not enough teachers, or maybe the teachers aren't paid well enough, but it seems like we have a whole lot of support staff that does not directly contribute to the education of our students. So someone who's in it can tell me if I'm wrong about the numbers, but I would first want to challenge the premise that we do not spend enough money on education.
Yeah, I want to think I want to check with that. I think the numbers are that Fairfax County receives like what, 2.5 billion or 3 billion out of the 10.
This year is over 4 billion,
Right.
and they get over half of it from Fairfax County, which is 3.4 billion. So just in the last couple of years, it's gone up $1 billion.
Right. So Fairfax County alone disproportionately receives the amount of funding from the state. Right. I mean, right. Well, it's the state funding, but the state does appropriate to Fairfax County. And I mean, Fairfax County is what, 1 million, the whole state is, 8 million people. And so, 1/8 is 10%, but I think we would see about 25 to 30% of the funding. So, but, you made a good point. You got to account for cost of living and how much it is more expensive in this area. But again, we also siphoning off from other students in the whole state. If we look at the big picture of the whole state. So, again, I'm on board with that, yeah, we got to fund our school, but again, we also have to provide alternatives. And like Adam said, we got to see what works and what doesn't. Money doesn't solve everything. If we putting more money into a bad thing, we're not, and I say previously, we're not getting the best bang for the buck. And we gotta find a way to better ourselves. I propose school choice, parents have more choices to, okay, if public schools doesn't work for them, they can get some of that money that would have gone to their student to go to private school or to in a school that fit their needs. And, that may be a better model, but, that there are some other ways and alternatives that we can explore, besides just the one premise that we keep getting stuck to is, we got to spend more money to fix this problem, right? I mean, we can tackle the problem in different angles.
Thank you very much. I have another question here. This one, how will we power all these data centers with clean energy? And the preface is, of course, how will we power all these data centers first? And how will we power them with clean energy second? Anybody like to take that?
Well, I'll get started, though I know Delegate Bulova has
Go for it, Karrie.
some additional expertise on energy issues, and it's probably our resident expert here. I also wish that Delegate Shin was here, because I think she passed one of the only data center bills that was actually signed into law. A lot of them got vetoed. So yeah, the data center issue, it's a big problem, right? And it's like getting worse, and the technology that is behind it is exploding to a point where if we don't get on top of this, it's going to be way too late, right? Because, AI and a lot of the technology that is running through data centers and causing this demand, it's putting this country in a really difficult bind. And I have met with people kind of on, if you say both sides, I guess, if you will, of the data center issue, those who really want to see them come to Northern Virginia, flourish, and market them as a great tax base. Like Loudoun County has seen all this big influx of money because of all the data centers, but then obviously residents don't like to see the data centers. They're having a major impact on our environment, and they are going to cost the ratepayer a tremendous amount of money if we don't get the energy solution under control. And so I think this is a combined issue that really needs to be addressed at both the state and the local level. And so I'll kind of take this opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about my approach to where does the state have its role and where does the local government have its role, because I think sometimes that can get a little mixed up, and sometimes we have to work together and sometimes we have to kind of stay in our lanes. But this is an all hands on deck type of issue. And so I guess to kind of summarize, data centers seem to be needed because people want the internet to work. They want the data, they want AI to work, they want to be able to look up stuff on ChatGPT, and that goes through the data centers and uses a lot of water and a lot of energy. We're searching things on the internet. The fibers are running up the East Coast, which makes Northern Virginia an optimal spot, which was answered. One of my early questions when I was first learning about this is, why are they coming here? The land here is super expensive. You'd think you'd want them somewhere else, but it's because of our location along the East Coast and where the fibers are running. So it's not even just a Virginia issue. It's a whole kind of nationwide issue as it relates to the whole coastal, stretch of this country. Because if they weren't in Virginia, they'd probably go somewhere else where we may not have as much control over the power and over the energy use and the environmental impact. So it is very much a balance where we need to kind of figure out what are the right guardrails that we need to put around, but, recognizing that they do apparently need to go somewhere, but we need to also be able to put the constraints around the way they're developed and how the energy is regulated and who is paying for that energy. I think that's a big question that needs to get answered. And so that it's not falling upon the Virginia ratepayer to run these very power hungry systems. And so I think the state has the role in governing over things that have kind of a global state impact, such that if something that happens in Fairfax or Loudoun affects people in other parts of Virginia, that's where the state really finds its role to come in and say, if Loudoun County is doing things that are affecting this district, then we should probably have a say as a state to regulate that, because other parts of Virginia are being impacted by a local, what might be perceived as a local decision. Where I think the local government really has its role, and where I really rely on those who we all elect to make those local land use decisions, has to do a lot with the placement. Because sometimes, we will hear from constituents about where they're going. And I certainly have a lot of opinions about that, and I'll make them known with my county supervisor. But our county supervisors will have, the opportunity to kind of consider what is the sense of place in a community. Do we like what things look like when you go up 28 and make a left turn and you kind of see all those data centers and all those townhouses? Is that what we want here in Sully? And that is a land use decision. That is part of the comprehensive plan. That is, those are zoning decisions that are made at the local level of government, where the state really shouldn't, in most cases, I'll kind of put the asterisk there, shouldn't in most cases get involved, but we are in, I think, a particularly contentious point around data centers, having to balance a technological kind of need that the country seems to rely on with the tremendous environmental and energy and cost impact and sense of place impact to our community. So I don't know if you want to add anything as our environment. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. Yeah, if I would like to answer, I'm not sure, if Karrie offer any solution. I think she just restated the problem. Couple of things. We do have solutions. We have nuclear energy. Governor Youngkin is upgrading the nuclear power plant at Lake Anna, right? And we're also upgrading the nuclear power plant at the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area. And there's also proposals for nuclear power plant in southwestern Virginia, right? And I'm sorry. Well, part, yeah, taxpayers, but if we are going to address the issue, I mean, that's one of the things, right? That's what budgets come to. We got to balance. There's all these balancing acts, right? We got education. We got many other competing priorities, but yeah, we are making this a priority because we have to address that issue. 50% of the data centers in the world goes through here. So yeah, it's a big problem. But we do have a solution for it. Well, rather than what, my Democrat representative's been doing, with the Clean Air Energy Act, which force solar farms on farms on land that stripped away its good soil, causing a lot of environmental damage. We have, I mean, I don't know if you guys know that Honda dealer up the street with a windmill. I mean, I've never seen it working. Like it never moves. So 300 something days out of the year, that solar windmill does not move. And I'm not sure what they get from that. those are not working. Yeah, we gotta see what's working and we gotta trust it. I'm also all for solar. I mean, I called solar companies and wanted to put solar on my house. And for some reason, it comes back, like it does not compute, we gotta go back to tax credits or whatever that, rooftops are much better place than farms which damage the environment. Right? And so, if we could put more solar panels, let's do it. But right now, we have some solutions with nuclear energy that we can put in, that we can upgrade, and nuclear energy also gone a long way since, it's actually in the 60s. So, we gotta tackle that problem. We have a need, we have some solution, but, we also have some good solutions like solar panel, but we gotta find a way to put it on the roofs of people's houses. But, till last 10 years, no good. All right, thank you.
Yeah, in my question, I also expressed concern about the location of data centers, and I'm concerned about their proximity to homes and the proximity to schools. As you're just expressing concern about the cost of education. Well, if data centers next to a school is going to impact education, that's something that should be considered. But I also feel like Governor Youngkin has basically let the horse out of the barn. I mean, he is opened up Virginia to data centers, and they're running headlong with these data centers. They're not. I mean, you see what has happened to the office development around here.
Why don't we change the format from an individual raising 20 questions? We're going to go back to the questions, all right?
This is just one quick question.
But it's not a quick question. You've been talking for about a quick question. The statement is too long. All right, I'm going to go back to would you support a reduction in the state income tax across the Commonwealth by 1 or 2 percentage points in exchange for allowing counties like Fairfax to collect a local option income tax of 1 or 2%?
Can I refer to the question beforehand?
No, we're going to go on.
But being an engineer, I
When there is another question about data centers, you'll be able to go.
All right.
So let's go on. So the question is, would you support lowering the state income tax to have local income tax by counties? Anybody have a comment?
To repeat that question?
So
Yes.
reduce here.
Would you support a reduction in the state income tax across the Commonwealth by 1 or 2 percentage points in exchange for allowing counties like Fairfax to collect the local options income tax of 1 or 2%?
Property tax, what's the difference between property?
Anybody have a comment on that?
Well, I'll think out loud. Like I say, I study economics and taxes and things like that. I actually worked at a tax and fiscal policy center, and actually enjoyed thinking and talking about taxes, as wild as that is. But essentially, on the one hand, it sounds pretty good because you're allowing people more local control. And as you know, this is the closest I've been to a legislator in a very long time. And so the more local something is, the more impact you have on it. So I love the idea of maybe one county somewhere doesn't want to have an income tax level at all to match it, and maybe someone does. So just from what I've heard so far, I like the idea of more local control, and maybe some counties want to have a higher income tax, and maybe some don't want to have one. So that's my initial thinking out loud.
Any other comments?
I'm not going to jump into the efficacy of whether or not we would want to give up part of our income tax at the state level and give it to the local level. What I will say is that we desperately need revenue. We need to have a broader range of revenue mechanisms at the local level. We desperately need to diversify our revenue sources. And so to rely so heavily on the real property tax, really puts families into a very, very tough position. And so it's not about, whether we're going to increase or decrease taxes. It falls very disproportionately on those who pay real property taxes, who are homeowners in Fairfax County. And so I do think, and this is something that the General Assembly has tried to do in the past with limited success, is that we need to diversify those revenue sources so that it's not hitting any one sector as hard as it does within Fairfax County right now.
Okay, seeing no other comments, next question. What can be done about the companies who are leasing land from Virginia farmers to build solar farms and then go bankrupt, causing the poor farmers to have to clean up the solar panel farms and clean the polluted land? Anybody like to address that? Oh, stand up and speak.
Oh, you could address that.
I already addressed it earlier. That's a bad deal for the farmers, bad deal for the taxpayer. I'm not sure what is, the bank, that's gonna be up to the bankruptcy court to hold these companies accountable and, whatever assets or liquidation that they do when they file bankruptcy, that they gotta pay some of that for the cleanup and damage. But it also, it gives you that's the result of bad policy. And we think Clean Energy Act, it's good. Everybody wants good environment, clean environment, but sometimes good intentions result in bad results that hurt people and hurt environment and hurt the very thing that they are trying to protect. And also, I would say, I agree with David on the property tax issue. It's property tax has been risen in Fairfax County, almost infinitely every single year. It's hurting a lot of people. And we got to find, sometimes, we were looking at data centers, casinos, possibly also to bring in some other revenues, but again, can also be bad. So we got to find a way, and that may be a good solution to explore. But I'm also all for we got to ease down the property tax and find alternate ways for the county to provide the services that everybody's needed, and the safety net, but and also how much of those services and how much of the safety net is needed by us, and it's all balancing act, and it's good to work together, and we'll have to
address the question.
I could just
Let the other David go.
Oh, go for it, David.
All right, well, becomes David G now. No, I kind of have a comment on that, because how is that different than, for instance, the way the builders or developers in the area declare bankruptcy before they finish off road projects, and when they look at their then and what the value of their assets are, they declare bankruptcy and they get out of the development. So kind of ask, how is that settled, or how was that ever settled?
From my personal experiences, counties require them to get a bond to cover that possibility. So they put a bond saying that they will complete it if they go bankrupt, the bond pays for it. If not a bond, but some sort of escrow account.
Yes.
And I know our subdivision had to use that to pay off some parts of the planned building that didn't go as according to some.
So would that be one solution behind that? But, in my case, actually, we lived in a community where the developer declared bankruptcy 6 times. Not in that development, but he was the 6th one on that. But he didn't finish road projects. Yes, he did post a bond, but in the time span that it took, the bond really was too low for the cost of finishing the project. So I think more assessment has to be done up front before we actually do that. Now, that doesn't help now in these situations. There's more to it that we've discovered, for instance, because we can't just put these into landfills. because when they leak, they destroy land and property, they destroy water supplies. So they're really, really dangerous. So my assumption is now we're looking at major issues with that, major issues as far as costs to actually take care of them. So, and again, I'm not the expert on it, but just in my experience with it, I've seen there's been issues.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of add, number one, I wasn't aware of a situation where that occurred. And so would be interested in learning more about kind of the fact pattern of the situation that resulted in that. So I better understand. I guess kind of like it was discussed, I would think, because this is a private contract between a farmer and the solar operator, that having some kind of assurance, financial assurance, bond or escrow would be part of a standard contract so that the farmer's not left holding the bag. What I can tell you is, that if a farmer finds themselves in that situation now, it is a private contract, and our Constitution does protect private contract rights. And so there's no way for us to go in there and fix an existing contract that lacks that. If it is a real problem, what we can do legislatively is say for future contracts, you have to protect the farmer by putting in some kind of financial assurance or bonding or escrow just in case they go bankrupt. So just from a process standpoint, we deal with that all the time. We're private contracts are like, oh, wow, that's not right. That really puts a buyer or a homeowner or an HOA in a bad position. You can't fix it because that's a private contract. But what we can do is say, how do we keep this from happening again?
I'm going to go with Karrie and then with Aaron.
So just to add a little bit to that, I similarly, I haven't heard of this happening. And so if there is an instance of this or a series of instances of this, I'm sure we would be really interested to hear about that. I know that this is an issue that generally kind of comes with some anxiety. So I don't know if this is proposed as kind of a hypothetical, what if it happens? Because there is some anxiety around the potential for farmland to be used for solar projects and the potential risks that it may have. So I think kind of exploring, are we talking about a hypothetical or are we talking about something that is actively happening and needs to be addressed? If it falls into the category of things that are very likely or have happened or we're starting to see a trend in Virginia, then I do think that coming into the General Assembly and giving us the information that we need to really make the decision about what legislation needs to be put in place to correct for that. It's kind of always a moving piece, right? Like we implement things, a lot of times it works out great, everything goes on. Sometimes there's an unintended consequence, and when that happens, coming back to the General Assembly, giving us a chance to get into the code and correct for something in contract law or something about the way that the localities are authorized to make some of these rezoning decisions, I think is always something that we can revisit as the facts and the data allow. And I will just take the 5-second opportunity to say that we have found a common ground already in that we're paying too much property taxes and that we do need to look for diversification. And so I'll put my check next to supporting that concept as well.
Thank you. I will actually agree with David here. It sounds like to that question, I would say buyer beware if they sold that land and it ended up going bust. And I don't know if this is, I haven't seen this, a reference to this occurring, but I'm going to drop a little bomb here and just say that in answer to the question earlier regarding clean energy powering these data centers, the cleanest energy is in fact nuclear. And here's the bomb. I want you to have a job. I know you deal with this in your life, but the green agenda is a total scam. Wind and solar is an absolute boondoggle. It's all about power, money, and control, and I'm not accusing him of any of that. But at the highest levels, that's what it's about. So you can't power data centers with wind and solar. You can't even power a watch for very long with a solar panel. So basically, I think that whether this case has occurred or not, what you're dealing with is a totally defunct energy source, that wind and solar is not viable. It has simply been a tool of those who want money, power, and control. So whether this has happened or whether it is not, it is emblematic of the big picture of, quote, green energy. And I do want you to have a job out of it.
Okay, next. Virginia state, local, and regional tax revenue loss due to data center subsidies at $928.6 million 2023, and this figure is only getting worse. Will you support eliminating the corporate welfare from the usually profitable data center industry to help fund schools?
So is that the other data centers? Yes, very much different.
So, anybody like to speak to that? A question about whether or not the data center subsidies of almost $1 billion and move that money to school to someplace else. I open the floor.
I was in a JLog study in both annual, financial report, 2020. We are losing about $1 billion now for the data center industry because we're giving them pull out tax exemptions, we're giving them subsidies. So my question is, we know we're doing that, why don't we stop that? We're one of 10 states.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted
I understand. Thank you for the background. I would like to turn it over to a panel.
I can try. And so in Virginia, we do have a pretty generous tax break for data centers. And the reason why that was put in place, and whether I was around or not, the reason it was put in place is because with respect to local governments, it provides a lot of tax revenue. So if you take a look at the real property tax rate in Loudoun and Fauquier and Prince William and compare it to Fairfax County, they're able to lower theirs by a lot because of data centers. And so it's one of these things where, yeah, you've lowered it for one local government, and then we pick up the tab at the state level. I do think we are at a point where we need to reckon with that, and we can't stick with the status quo. And so whether that needs to be adjusted to be a little less generous, I think that is on the table. I think we also need to take a look at things like water use. We need to take a look at noise. We need to take a look at energy use and say, hey, if you're going to continue to enjoy this tax break, you need to do X, Y, and Z. The reason why I'm a little hesitant to say that we're going to just take it away is because we have so many of them in Virginia already, and the technology that is in those data centers tends to get cycled out every 2 to 5 years. And so if we were to just yank that away, there would be an economic incentive for those companies to abandon those shells and just set up in another state. And I could take a look at your face, but it is a real threat. So what I don't want to be left with is the worst of all situations where we now have these empty shells of data centers that are no longer making, yeah. So, and anyways, I'm just sharing with you kind of the considerations and concerns is, making sure that, people aren't packing up and leaving the shells and going elsewhere. So it's tough. Like I said, the status quo is untenable. It's really hard to get our arms around exactly what that sweet spot is. And quite honestly, that's something that I think the next administration needs to take a leading role on in order to say, hey, how are we going to right size this ship for Virginia?
Thank you. Okay, the next one is, are you in favor of a Homestead Act that freezes senior real estate taxes when they go on Medicare or fixed retirement incomes like in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, South Carolina, Florida, and Texas?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's part of what I'm running on and the issues on that. Yeah, again, a key aspect to that is there's a huge brain trust in our senior citizens. And if they can't afford to live here, that's a problem because we lose that. And once they leave, they're not coming back. So if indeed there is a tax surplus that does exist, I'd say that should be first in there. Let's keep that brain trust. I'm 66, so I guess I'm a little greedy on that. I don't know, but seriously, that's something we really can't afford to lose.
Thank you. Any other members who wish to stand up and speak?
Maybe just to second that and add on that my mom, my dad who's passed away, they both bought the house 45 years ago when it was actually farm land. And I don't know how much they paid for the house, but I'm sure it's probably quadrupled at least in its property value. So now she's a widow and she's doing great, but she doesn't make money. She's on fixed income, and she was one of those comers in 1980, And now with the increasing property taxes, you know, she hasn't talked about it, but she's one of those at risk for having to leave this place that she has, you know, raised her family in and invested so much time in. She is an absolutely valuable part of the community, and I'm sure there are so many more people who may be in that situation or have loved ones that are in that situation. So I'm not necessarily for carve outs and even subsidies, as you were talking about. I'm really for having good policy across the board, lowering taxes across the board. But I think if there's ever a time for a carve out, it would be for those senior citizens whose incomes do not go up and yet property taxes do. So I'm about great policy across the board, but if there's a time for a carve out, I think that's one.
Okay, I'll deal with it, Karrie.
Okay, so, I think we have to do everything we can, not just to, you know, support the seniors, lower taxes. We need to be looking at our youth and look at the restaurant business. Anyone that's having to shell out taxes on tips and things like that, we have to figure out how to keep more money in everybody's pocket. And the car tax is one of my, platform ideas. I think we need to go and look at the car tax. We are one of the few states that still has one. And when people move into the state, find out, what, I gotta pay for my car every single year. And it really does affect those people, those workers who, you know, are, you know, day-to-day living, and they have to go get a couple $100, $500 bill in their mailbox. They have to pay it over Fairfax County Government Center. So I think, you know, there's a lot to be thought about in Virginia and how we do our taxes, what revenue sources we should have. I mean, I think we're at a point where we really need to take some hard look at our tax reform all up and down. So that would be, you know, those are some ideas right there.
So, you know, and I always am reluctant anytime you hear a politician say, yes, I absolutely support cutting this tax, period, without kind of the add-on that, okay, somewhere the funding is gonna have to come from somewhere. I think this does address like a greater housing affordability issue. And if having exemptions like this can help some of the people who need it the most, I would absolutely support that. But I think, you know, it comes with the duty of understanding where's that revenue going to be taken from, and how are we going to compensate for it? And if there's a way we can do that equitably, absolutely. Because, you know, you buy a house, you pay it off, and now you can't afford to live in it anymore. I mean, I think we can all agree that's not right. But I think we're also in a situation, kind of going back to the bigger issue of our property taxes. You can be in your house paying your mortgage, working, you know, everyone in your family working, and you still can't pay. You still are getting priced out of that house that you qualified for the mortgage for, because the property taxes are rising at such a rate. And I think that there needs to be some further exploration of that, because, you know, we see a housing market boom in places like Fairfax County. Your house might be worth $200,000 more now than it was a few years ago. But the county's budget surely hasn't grown by that same percentage. So why is your property tax growing by, you know, that larger percentage? Those are concerns I hear quite often from constituents, is that property tax rises need to at least be tracking with something other than maybe a bubble in the real estate market that can ebb and flow. And so I think it really does speak to a bigger issue of how our property taxes affect the bottom line of everyone, and how do we find equitable solutions to provide the relief where it is most needed for those who, you know, simply need to be able to stay in the homes that they own.
So, you know, with that, we have to have spending. Where are we spending our money? And you have to, and this is where the property tax issue that we've all been experiencing, much of it is due to the amount of money that we've had to give to our school system. And then if we have a state issue there. So I think, you know, we really have to take a hard look how we're spending our money. How much is the Fairfax County government from? You know, what are we doing there? It looks like we dodged a bullet for a little bit on this, the unified sanitation project called the trash. You know, we get one trash guy. There was going to be an office of 24 or 25 people, but everybody said, you know, anybody that wanted to get their own trash hauler said, no, we don't want to do that. But that's the example of growth, that once you get it in, and I work for the federal government, I know how this works. You know, once you get something in, you can't get it out. And so you really have to, these are the things we need to do when we're talking about reducing the amount of money that people are taking out of their pocket from many different things. What are we spending our money on, and can we do it better and get better out of it? So.
Yeah, and I just want to end that and remind everybody that the Board of Supervisors that raised the property taxes for everybody is 9-1 Democrats. And it's been the one-party rule that's over the last 10 years been raising a lot of your taxes, making you spend more. And again, we're not getting the best bang for the buck. So, we'll take a hard look at, what's spending, what's the priority, but, right now, we've been on the trajectory that we've been spending a lot more, but not getting what we needed from the government services, and a lot of people are hurt by that, and so we need to solve that.
Okay, here is the next question. We have 3 questions between us. I appreciate challenges represented by cost of housing, high taxes.
That's already the answer.
Is that?
That was already the answer.
Well, no, not yet. High taxes and cost of education. I'm interested in hearing positions on data centers and specifically proximity to homes and schools. So it's the last sentence. That's the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up that issue or at least some comments that were mentioned about data centers, their viability, their use, and why they're located here. So let me actually mention it in that as far as transmission of data distances, they travel at the speed of light. So 5,000 miles is insignificant to 20 miles or 40 miles. So that's not a reason in the middle of the country or in the middle of Virginia. So again, I would question that.
Well, the question is proximity to a house or an elementary school or a school. That's the question.
Yeah, but I was asking, I was answering that previous, because there was kind of misinformation which was stated. A lot of what's happening, at least my thoughts, from looking at this expansion and what's happening with AI and the need for electrical for that and the size of these things, I would question whether that's really just data centers and capturing data. There's a lot more involved with that. So we are expanding now our grid. And this kind of makes sense to me more because, again, you have transmission loss with electricity. So distance matters with that. So that, to me, looks like that's what a lot of these data centers are being built for. Just the size of them and the proximity, yes, I do question their proximity. And because a lot of the technologies which we're bringing out, for instance, 5G definitely cooks. There is no doubt about it. So your proximity to that could be in question. So there are definite issues. Are they being looked at would really be my first question and the first objective to see how and why they were placed there and truly the intent of it. So hopefully that answers the question. But
I just want, that particular issue is a local issue. So where a data center actually gets placed, that's where the Board of Supervisors gets involved. Have one planning commission on that. And so you have to really, and I know this is a big deal. I don't have that necessarily where I live, but neighbors get in there and they fight it like crazy. And they sometimes the Board of Supervisors are just override that. But that's how the locations are determined. That's the local thing. Now, I don't know, I'd love to ask our delegates if there are ways that state can help, with some guardrails, if you will, at the local level, at that supervisor, or is it completely?
Well, I guess what I'd say, because that was one of the things that the JLARC study looked at, because I wouldn't want a data center popped into my backyard, and I also wouldn't want a sports complex. I also wouldn't want an industrial complex. But I have learned over my 20 years that local governments are generally better at making local land use decisions in terms of zoning and planning and doing that. And whenever the state tries to get involved and micromanage that stuff, we usually make more of a mess of it than anything. One of the things we do want to make sure, and I think I know the answer to this from the JLARC study, is to ensure that our localities have all the authority they need in order to be able to do those things, right? And so we are a Dillon rule state. A locality can only do what they're authorized to do by the General Assembly. And so, to the degree that a local government doesn't feel that they have the power to deal with noise, to make sure that they're not being located too close to a school or too close to residential neighborhoods, that's the kind of stuff where I think it's very appropriate for the General Assembly to say, hey, yes, explicitly, you local government have the authority to do that. And then you figure out how you're going to implement that on the ground level.
Okay, next question. 100% disabled military vets pay no real estate property taxes, but those with disabilities rated less than 100% pay the full amount. Would you support legislation that gives those vets with disabilities ratings between, let's say, 50% to 90% of proportional property tax reduction?
I would work that into a tax reform discussion, absolutely. Being a military family for my entire life, I know the services they provide and we have to take care of them.
I would definitely second that. Yeah, I would second that. Having worked with a lot of the special forces and with the military, I definitely agree. They provide a service which is irreplaceable.
And I'll make a slight comment. We talk about disabled military. We also have disabled police or peace officers.
Absolutely.
The police, the fire department, and I agree that vets have that category, but I would, my own personal opinion, think that we would want to extend it to peace and fire and safety people as well for the sake of argument. But go ahead.
Actually, that's what I wanted to tell you. I agree with you. First responders, we are looking at that too. I've been endorsed by the Virginia Police Benevolent Association. And one of the other they've got a couple issues there related to medical benefits and taking care of those people that can no longer serve. So I'm on board with looking at those kinds of things and see how we can help them because they're in the line of duty every single day. So
I'm going to go that way and then work our way across the head.
Yeah. I mean, I think David and I are the only veterans here. I'm a veteran and veteran.
why.
And but I also get disability. So I do get disability from the U.S. Army, and but again, that sounds like a prorated thing. And we're covering a lot about taxes, and then we're giving tax cuts, but again, there's got to be some money to cover it, and like Cassandra said, it's got to be part of a tax reform package. We got to prioritize and which groups most deservingly need these tax breaks that we got to make this area more affordable, so people can live in it and not move out. Fairfax County has been losing residents the past few years, and we got to change that. It's a great place to live. I grew up here, so I want people to continue to live here, and all kinds of people, all kinds of diversity. Fairfax County is a great diverse place, and we got to make that and keep that for everybody. So of course we all support it. It's common sense, but with caveat again, we like Karrie also said that we got to look at spending and how we spend things, and value, best bang for the buck. And so far, like I said, last 10 years with Democrat one party rule, we haven't gotten that. The taxpayers are not getting the best service from the government, and we had to change that. And it's in the interest of all taxpayers here in Sully and Fairfax County to have more than one party to represent themselves.
Going down the line,
Virginia is a home to a lot of military veterans here in Northern Virginia. Obviously, we've got a lot that brings military veterans or the military to our area and then they retire. We've got certainly pockets around the Commonwealth where we have bases where it's a big part of our economy. And I think that, yeah, if we can find a way to kind of come up with a scale like was proposed in the question that could help make sure that, you know, those members of our community who have been serving our country while also living and being, you know, good residents of our communities can continue to afford to live here. Similar answer to that with our seniors. We want to make sure that, you know, that people have the ability to stay where they live and to, you know, to stay where they call home. And I think we do have a lot of our service members who have made Virginia their home after their service. And if we can find a way to consider a scale like was proposed, that would help make sure that people who want to continue to make Virginia their home can do so, I would absolutely be happy to consider and support that.
That scale is copied from the Obama scale for refurbishing, by the way.
So just a clarification on that, because, correct me if I'm wrong though, was that previously proposed though, and somehow it fell, because I thought that was a proposal, or.
I cannot speak to that, it's for 100%. The 100% got through.
For 100%, still don't.
So it was the 100% question now is extending it for radio from down to 50.
It was just for 100% when it was previously proposed.
That's all or nothing.
I think that got into the Constitution. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, next question, and this is less of a question than just a statement that somebody gave me for information purposes. Fairfax County has 100% real estate tax relief for seniors that make less than 70K and have less than 450 savings. Social Security for the same. My last question is in front of me. I'm sure everybody here is happy to hear this. Delegate Luke Torrain of Manassas submitted a bill to deny children of deceased veterans and first responders killed in the line of duty from receiving free in-state tuition to state colleges and universities. Why was that bill supported? And will you support the reenactment of this bill?
I remember the conversations around this. It's going to take me a second.
Yeah. So I'm going to start from this side. Yesterday, last week, I can start it down there. This side. Way down. Well, anybody want to speak? This side first. Bill got it last.
Well, I guess put it this way, I'm assuming that it didn't pass.
Right.
And without a bill number in front of me, I can't look at the details, but just kind of on its face, it sounds to me like there was a reason it didn't pass. And so I think that's very safe that you don't want to take away an important benefit like that. And so I'll kind of leave it at that.
I don't want to jump the line here, but just having been in the General Assembly when that bill was considered and did not pass, I remember it. I'd like to go back and kind of read it and remember some of the details that I'm not going to instantly be able to recall while sitting up here, but I do remember quite a bit of Gold Star families coming to Virginia and meeting with us. I think if I remember correctly, okay, do you have some details? If I remember correctly, it may have been some trying to solve a problem, but then revealing that there were some unintended consequences in the way that the problem, you've got it, you've got it.
So, all right, so now that I'm remembering, so I think this was back in like 2018, where we wanted to provide a special benefit for disabled veterans and veterans in general in order to be able to get in-state tuition for Virginia colleges and universities. The initial estimate for how much that would cost was about $5 million. And so the decision was made, that's a great deal in order to be able to say thank you to our veterans. This last year, that amount ballooned to about $80 million. And that's money that was coming directly from our public universities that we weren't paying for. And so that means that the tuition for everybody else goes up. I think one of the initial responses to that is how do we kind of narrow who gets that benefit? And one of the ideas is that if you don't have a specific link to Virginia or don't live in Virginia, then you shouldn't be getting that particular benefit. Ultimately, it was decided, you know what, we're going to leave the program as is. We didn't want to roll back that benefit, but what we did want to do was make sure that we're actually compensating and reimbursing our state universities so that they, well, because remember, if they are losing that money, they have to make it up from somewhere else. That means that all of us middle-class people are paying higher tuition rates, okay? And so the way that we fixed it was we basically said, you know what, we as a Commonwealth, we are going to take ownership of this benefit and not make our colleges and universities have to pay for all of that. And so that's what we did. So program is the same. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. But I think it really was important that Virginia as a Commonwealth decided this is something we wanted to do and we're going to pay for it rather than foisting that cost burden on our universities.
So would you revisit it?
I think the most important thing we can do is to keep up with the cost of it and make sure that we're reimbursing our universities. Because again, if we don't do that, they're going to have to raise tuition. And it's basically making people who are already struggling to pay for tuition, particularly people from Northern Virginia, that makes it all that much tougher for them. And so we need to make sure that we're keeping our universities whole. So I think that's kind of the policy we're at. That's the policy that I support.
So in revisiting it, then would you look at what that cost would be to everybody else to reimburse that? You know, in other words, the distributed cost may not be as large, you know, across the general population for that benefit.
Right. And so the idea, I mean, the cost is the cost, right? So we're giving a discount with respect to the cost of a higher education. What we want to make sure is that cost isn't concentrated on just people paying tuition and their families. We want to make sure that cost is spread out among all of Virginia taxpayers, right? And so that's only fair. If Virginia is going to say that we're going to do this, Virginia ought to be willing to go ahead and pay for that. And so I think that's fair.
Any other comments before I go?
Yeah, if I could, I don't know if this is our last question and if we're wrapping up, but I'll be happy to make this at least part of my closing statement. But David here mentioned something that studying economics, and weirdly, I actually love economics. It's really weird, but I promise I'm a normal person. But one of the biggest things in economics that we learn about is unintended consequences. And then when they delved into that issue, they realized that there are some unintended consequences with giving this special benefit. And so I think that one thing that we always need to remember is that kind of like win-win-win said, that's his little slogan over there. Win-win-win said earlier is that sometimes you have a great intention, but you get a different result. So we always need to be careful about unintended consequences. And to shoot back to another question and wrap it up in this, that earlier I said I don't really like carve-outs, but I'd probably give one to my mom. And then another question was about the vets. And then we added this first responders in there. Then we got to add someone else. And then we got to add a beneficiary of a first responder. And it just seems to me like the list grows and grows of people who need special benefits. And it seems like a slippery slope, a very honorable one to go down. But this is where I'd like to say that we simply need to make it good for everyone, right? To where we don't need to give special benefits to mothers and to vets and to children of vets and to first responders. We really just need to make a Virginia that works for everyone. And then I want to highlight and amplify something that Karrie said, which is that you do in fact have to, well, she didn't say this, but she was implying this, that you actually have to cut programs. She probably did not mean that, so don't, she did not say that. She did not say that. Cass said that, but that if you want to lower taxes, if you want to make Virginia and District 11 better for everyone, you actually do have to make really hard decisions and tell some special interest group somewhere, some person who came to you and said, what about my problem? You actually have to have courage to say, that is not the taxpayer's role. That is not the taxpayer's job. And you have to have great courage to actually cut those programs and cut those services and do only those things that government should be doing, which are actually few and far between. So I don't like carve-outs. I'd rather make it great for everyone. And in order to do that, you have to have great courage.
Thank you, Adam, for being the first person to summarize. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes down the road, starting from Dave, this Dave, and go this way. You have 2 minutes to summarize, and then we'll thank you all for being here tonight.
Yeah, well, I won't need 2 minutes. Again, I just want to say thank you for the Sully District Council for putting this on. I know it's a labor of love, but this is always really useful to have that exchange of ideas and the dialogue. I want to thank Adam very much for throwing his hat in the ring. I do believe that competition and the exchange of ideas strengthens our democratic processes. And so thank you for doing that. Really good to be here with you today. I'll tell you, I got into public office because, like I said, I grew up here in Fairfax County. It's changed a lot since I was a little kid, but I do remember just being the beneficiary of tremendous quality of services, right? And so I went to Robinson. It was a great school, still is a fantastic school. We are the envy of the Commonwealth when it comes to our school system. I grew up right behind a county park. I spent most of my time out there building rafts and forts, and my parents would go ahead and give me a call at 6 o'clock at night to go ahead and come in and eat dinner. We had great library systems. You name it. I had a fantastic quality of life. But when I look back, I realize how fortunate that I was as a kid. And not all kids growing up in Virginia or Fairfax County had those same opportunities. And so for me, this is really all about making sure that every child who is born and raised in Fairfax County, who is born and raised in Virginia, has those same opportunities to be able to live their life to the absolute fullest. And so that is why I am so focused on things like not just K through 12 education, but also early childhood care and education. It's just incredible how the brain develops between birth and kindergarten. And so that is where it all begins. That's where my energy and my focus has been in the General Assembly. I love the problem solving aspect. You saw some of it here today. What I can assure you is that what you see in Washington, we actually do get along in Richmond. And that's something that Karrie and I are mindful of and we guard. Because, we'll get up there and we'll saber rattle on the House floor, but behind the scenes, we do work together to be able to solve those problems. So anyways, again, thank you so much. It's been an honor of a lifetime to be able to serve the 37th District first and then the 11th District. And ask again for your support to send me back down there to work forward with you in Richmond.
Yes, thank you for allowing me the time for this. One thing that I've noticed, a lot of talk on budgets and really just an assessment of costs and looking to reduce costs, but not looking at different ways, maybe out of the ordinary, to reduce those costs. One of the benefits that I think I can bring to Richmond is that being an engineer, being the diversity of projects that I've worked on and what I've done, cost is essential. That is one of the requirements which we need to work with, but it's not the only one. And that's key. I bring that up because that's all I'm hearing is cost, cost, cost. And yeah, that's important, but you can reduce costs by looking at things in a different way and using maybe different methods. Hopefully you can see that in my expertise, what I've done. That's what I look to bring to Richmond. Thank you.
Well, also thanks to the Sully Council for hosting this. Thank you to Nhan for running and kind of being a part of, like David said, this kind of opportunity to be part of this process. And thank you for all the candidates really for being here tonight, and my colleague as well, all of us. Thank you.
Nobody asked the general laws, what do you do question? I'm hurt.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But thanks to everybody really, because I mean, I think it is so important that we have moments like this. Like I kind of opened with, I'll close with the same idea that, we need to be able to have these conversations and hear different ideas and hear different solutions. Because I think one takeaway tonight is that, these are big problems that don't always have a really like easy 30-second soundbite answer. These are things that need a lot of careful consideration. They need study, they need analysis, they need data. And it's hard to say, yeah, we would definitely do this until some of that work has been done. We're a part-time legislature. We meet 45 to 60 days out of the year, and we consider thousands of bills during that time. It requires a whole community to come together and really talk about the issues and understand where do we agree, where do we disagree, where can the problems be solved. I think I've heard something from everyone here that I agreed with tonight. And, I think that, again, a lot of this process right now is kind of looking at sort of where are the differences between candidates, so you can make your decisions when you go to the polls. But after Election Day, let's also try to work on what I think, David said we do have in Richmond, which is that ability to really also come together and recognize where do we agree, where can we work together, where can we find common ground. So definitely consider, your candidates, and I ask for your support on November 4th for early voting before. But definitely after this election cycle, let's come back together as a community as well and recognize that we've got some big problems to solve. No one side has the monopoly on exactly how to do that. We all have ideas, and I think really hearing each other, hearing the humanity in our answers and where we're coming from on why we're trying to solve the problems the way we are, will get us to the common ground solutions that will be lasting and generational. So thank you all tonight for being here tonight.
Right, and, well, I want to thank Adam for calling for my pun. Win for Virginia. Pun intended. And yes, vote for me. It would be a win for Virginia. But, we're all good people here trying to solve problems. And, we're very fortunate. We're always willing to work together. And, that's the core of democracies. But, let's not have the niceties mask the problems, right? I mean, we do have problems, and a lot of these problems are by bad policies by the Democrats, one party ruling back down for the last 10 years. So we have to address that. We have Board of Supervisors 9-1 Democrats, right? We have Fairfax County House of Delegates. It's 0 for 15-16. Or 16-0 Democrats, right? I mean, and yeah, we have 40%. Also, conservatives might or other people here, and especially in Sully, which is a great number. So, you're not getting the representation that you need. And it's enabled these bad policies to take place and causing the problems that we have now. So we have to tackle that. We have to change that. If you want true democracies to work, you can't have 16-0 representation. You can't have 9-1 Board of Supervisor representation. That's not democracy, right? So I've said before, it's in the best interest of the taxpayers, to have both sides, and to have both sides represented in the General Assembly. And so, I want to thank Karrie for her service the last 8 years, but I think Sully is, and we gotta take away the high taxes policies that got us in this mess of unaffordability. Bad policies of unintended consequences, like the Clean Air and Energy Act. And again, they're not so complex as what Karrie said. We do have solutions. Like we have cutting the car tax, we have school choice, we have nuclear energy, we have what else? We fought for clean environment against the data centers right here in Sully. That was me fighting for it 2 years ago. So we do have solutions, and the Democrats are not doing it. So anyway, thank you. Please support me. I think we need a fresh air change. Win for Virginia.
Thank you very much to the Sully District Council for inviting me to participate tonight. I'm fortunate enough my opponent is sick, so hopefully she's okay. I didn't sit with her at another League of Women voter debate recently. So I think we are at a point where we really do need to look at some major things that are affecting our ability to live here and our children. And we may not agree those are big things. I mean, I think Delegate, education is still great. Well, I came in back in the 1970s. My father landed here in his last job And they deliberately picked here in versus Maryland to live because the school system really was truly, considered to be the premier school system. And I think it still is. I mean, I think there's still some, but there's a lot of upgrading in it. We just need to get around the edges on it. So I think we got to look at education reform, tax reform, energy reform, because I do agree with Adam that I think there's a lot of money being put into some things like the Clean Air Act. But the outcomes are not good. Solar, the 25 solar plants are not working very well. And so, am I not loud? Okay. So, major reform. What we have not talked about tonight, and my opponent has this on her platform, are the federal employees and the real concern about federal employees. And I want to tell you that, yes, I am, as a former federal employee, concerned also. But I think we have to really, I think Governor Youngkin did the right thing right up front when he saw this coming down. You got, the job portal out there. We need to continue to keep those people here, get them employed if they're not employed. I know they're working on that. And the one thing we do not want to do is get rid of the Right to Work Act, which is something that my opponent wants to do. We do not want to do that. We want to let organizations decide whether they want to unionize on their own time. But we cannot have it so that it opens up the state to major unions coming in. Even the police agree with them. They have their own little collective bargaining. So I think this is something we ought to be very concerned about. We talked about revenue, talked about taxes, kind of kept it in the government bucket. We've got small businesses, we've got to keep them in the fold. We've got to bring business in, we need to diversify on our federal government platform. It just can't be federal government. We've relied on this too long. And so I do believe we need to work on that in the state. And the last thing I would like to say, and unintended consequences, absolutely, but it's also about policies that you keep in place too long when you're seeing the outcomes be continuously bad. And if you can't throw money at a problem, this was my life work for many, many years, the Department of Defense. Looked at programs, only so much money you could do, at $4.5 billion, what could you do at $4.5 billion in 1 year? The low hanging fruit are those things that just did not work. So we really have to figure out what those programs are and let those go and then work on the programs we really need to keep making better. I want to thank you. My name is Cassandra Aucoin. My website is voteforcassandra.com. Quick story, I used to have it, I used to be CassandraAucoin.com in the 2023 election. This is a scam. You let that thing go, somebody buys it, then they want to sell it back to you. And they wanted me to pay $1 million. And I said, I'm not doing it. I like my name, but I'm not going to that much. But it's just really, and I will tell you, these are the kinds of things we're running into more and more, these kind of scams and things like that. So we have a wonderful county. I love this county. Love my place where I live. Reston is beautiful. And so we just want to make it better for all the kids. So they want to stay. Seniors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like, if somebody in the audience, take a picture of the 6 of them. I can't use it, my camera is taking the video. So if you would all stand. And somebody from the peanut gallery, take a picture of all our wonderful candidates and send them to me at Webmaster on the website. We're going to see it. All right, everybody get together. Now, I want to point out that there are 3 candidates here tonight who have 1 precinct in Sully, and we thank them for spending as much time as the others who have multiple. And that's Cassandra, David.
I have 2.
You have 2. All right. Vice President is David. But thank you all for coming. Now, in 2 years hence, we'll do this again, and we'll have the senators as well. They don't run. And next, in 2 years, we'll also have another one for the county candidates. But thank you all for coming. The questions were great. The answers were as good. And it's this type of forum where it's not a debate. It's questions and answers, and we hear from all of you that we sponsor, that the league works. And we thank you for coming. We really do. And thank you all for being positive for that. And thank the Republican and Democratic committee chairs for making you aware of this and having you come out. Okay? Thank you all again. Thank you. Now, if you want to stay, the facility council go through our activities, see what we do and how we perform, and then everybody's go. All right? So I'm going to share my screen and do that right now. So if I come here.
Nice to meet you too.
Cordial as we ever do.
Wait, on speed.
Yeah, I was not born. Didn't set it on way.
So.
You get a lead. I do enjoy the other stuff. I'm not saying.
Say it. Really? Well, I heard some.
Web Institute, 2025, Sully.
Libertarian.
Okay, so I wanted to point out, joint Sully District Land Use Transportation Committee met in person last Monday. We discussed three things. We discussed the draft.
Both of you.
Zoning.
Website. We have a future. Appreciate that. I'm going
The comprehensive plan amendment.
Okay.
The policy plan. We have the resolution.
Yeah.
Next month.
YouTube.
We're gonna have some. Next month. Community center. On the 22nd, we have. On the land use question.
You mentioned the class.
Yeah, no, that is there. It's critical. It's
I actually put,
expensive and,
a little interview that I did recently. On the top of that goddamn exercise. You see maybe me, recently, I'm still with the rest of the
yeah, because you create winners and losers.
Yeah, let me take it out.
Sure. So,
Let me know if you want it.
Stop there, $4 billion.
Right.
What is? 350.
Right.
Still 370 million generation.
No,